Hey everyone. Well, first I want to say that it's been a real pleasure to be able to do this channel. I want to thank you all so much for watching these videos and commenting on them. A lot of interesting stuff came up around the coverage that I did for the 2024 presidential election. This is a few months ago now, but had a lot of really interesting comments there, and I wanted to do a video reading some of those comments and responding to them. Now, the theme of this and the question I want to put forth here is in relation to Christianity and US presidential politics with our current president, Donald Trump. My question is there a Christian case, a New Testament case, going by the words and commandments of Jesus, whereby Christians should support Donald Trump in the kinds of things he says and the kinds of things he does? So that's kind of my question and the theme of this video, and it has a lot to do with the coverage I did leading up to the election, where I talked a lot about the different candidates, Biden first, then Harris, then Trump, and the differences between them and how I felt about them from my attempt at putting a Christian perspective on it. So I'm going to start off by reading this comment here from a video I did about when Trump was talking about Haitian immigrants eating pets. This is by Julie Looms, who says, "How do you know he was lying? I heard J.D. Vance mention things his constituents have told him from that area. I believe Trump does have a heart for the poor, for babies. It's just the illegal immigration that is bringing a lot of crime, drugs, etc. into the U.S. They are being encouraged to come, given a lot of dollars from the current government, when there are so many poor, homeless, veterans, struggling people already in the U.S. Well, I'm going to bring up a few problems I have with this comment here. First of all, the idea that we just don't have enough money to take care of people. We can't take care of people in need who already live in this country, let alone new people who are coming in and may need some assistance in getting on their feet and getting started. You know, if you look at the numbers of people who are coming in, the number of people who are looking for asylum, the numbers of people who need financial aid, and then that the size of the U.S. economy and the wealth of the wealthiest people, the amount of taxes that are already collected, the amount of spending that is spent, it would take a fraction of a fraction of a fraction to help millions of migrants every year. Even if, let's say, an extreme situation where we had millions of people being brought in every year and they all needed assistance, we could do it, and it would not be a strain on the nation's economy. This is a nation of about 340 million people. Talking about migrants, crime, drugs, that's not great. You know, that's something that the media does a lot, and it gives us this idea, just constantly saying those things together: migrants, drug, crime, migrants, drugs, crime. It's an unfortunate way of talking about people. It's not true. Migrants are statistically less inclined towards crime and drugs. The fact that drugs are coming into the country is not because of migrants and asylum seekers bringing those drugs. The United States sends out tens of billions of dollars every year to purchase drugs, and those drugs are going to find a way in. I would like to believe that Trump has a heart for the poor, like Julie says here. I'd have to see it to believe it, though. And, you know, if you have a heart for the poor, you got to start with the least. Who are the least? Who are the people with no power, no resources? Who are those people, and is he going to look out for them? On that same video, got this comment from Philip Lynch, who says, yes, he is lying. He says so many lies that he can't even keep up with them. He has no heart for the poor. He did nothing for the poor when he was in power. In fact, he wants to take away benefits from the U.S. poor. Yes, there is a migrant crisis, but there has been one for almost as long as I can remember, and is not going to be solved until there are better alternatives in the home countries of these migrants. I take issue with calling it a migrant crisis. If it wasn't for immigration into the United States, the population of the United States would be dropping by now. The fact that the United States has not aged as quickly as other Western nations and still has a fairly large workforce and a fairly large industrial base, that's because of migrants. But I agree very much with the sentiment of this comment, pushing back on the anti-migrant lies, yes, lies from Donald Trump and the mainstream right-wing media. I think it's fair to call it a lie when these kinds of mistruths about migrants have been repeated so many times. It's you can say it was a misspeak or something, or he just said something that turned out to be wrong. But when it's been consistent year after year after year after year, and it's such a key part of his political message, I think it's fair to call Trump's untruths about migrants lies. And this particular one about the Haitian migrants turned out to be a lie. And thankfully, the people of Springfield, Illinois, rallied to the support of their local Haitian community and pushed back against those lies. Now, here's some responses to a video I made about examining the weaknesses of each candidate from a Christian perspective. What would be the weakness that could lead to either of those candidates losing, Harris or Trump? Obviously made before the election took place. This is by one Justin Harris, who says, "How about this? Donald Trump is a POS. The idea that someone who purports to believe in the teachings of Jesus would vote for him is insane, and yet it's millions of Christians hands across the country for good old Donald Trump. If Christians didn't think people took them seriously before, they are in for a rude awakening in the near future." He brings up a good point. I don't agree with his sentiment, which seems a little bit anti-Christian, or at least kind of gleeful maybe about the downfall of Christians, but it is true that it is happening, and Christians aren't being taken seriously because they shouldn't be taken seriously when they support the kinds of things that they have been supporting lately. And talking specifically about evangelical Christians who have been very vocal and active in their support for Donald Trump, and who were previously very vocal and active in their support for George Bush. And, there's a long tradition of Christians standing up for and supporting candidates who do terrible things to people who they consider to be lesser than themselves. And for sure, a lot of people are looking at the state of the American church with either dismay or just shaking their heads, or even with excitement just to watch it crash and burn and go away. I even know some Christians who have an attitude of just hoping that the evangelical movement just heaps so much shame on itself that it just goes away and no one ever wants anything to do with it again. Personally, I try to be more optimistic. I am more optimistic, I guess. I hope there will be a turnaround. I know that even within the right-wing evangelical movement, there are so many good people, so many people who do good in their day-to-day lives, who are an example of the New Testament teachings. Now, sometimes they kind of put on blinders maybe when they go to politics and they support things that are contrary to the New Testament, but they do still have light in them and good works coming out of them. And I hope, I believe, and I'm praying for that there will be a very noticeable shift in Christians away from the anti-immigrant policies, away from the pro-war policies, away from the anti-Palestinian policies, and a public rejection of what's wrong and standing up for what's right, standing up for the little people, standing up for the people who are meek, weak, needy, the kinds of people that Christians are commanded by Jesus to take care of. Moving on now to a video where I talked about my preference in the upcoming election. I did this video just a few days before the election was held. Here Kun Werit says, "The term third world has evolved into developing world, highlighting the dynamic growth of many nations. Today, several developing countries are advancing faster than established economies, positioning them to potentially surpass current developed countries in wealth, infrastructure, and influence. As these nations reach, quote, developed status, the global landscape will shift. It's natural and, in fact, pretty much unstoppable." Absolutely right. That was a point I was making in that video, how we're in this time when things are changing. America can't expect to be the most powerful, most wealthy nation, and we need a leader who is going to be better at kind of navigating that, at doing the right thing, treating people right in foreign relations, treating people right who are trying to come into this country, because the world is changing and we're not going to be able to stop it. We have to just do our best to do the right thing and take care of people no matter what the situation is. Another comment here by Don Bobby, who says, "I think what you don't get is it's that person's job as president to just give your people a better life, and life is unfair, and it really sucks. But they are the biggest, and the only way people are satisfied is if they get the same or more as last year. So I don't think they're evil. That's just a job, I guess." Yeah, good point. I'm critical of candidates for not doing things according to a New Testament standard, but as Bobby points out here, that's not really what's expected of candidates, unfortunately. However, I do believe that by doing things more and more according to the teachings of Jesus, it would be better for the country as well. It's not just fulfilling one's duties to the kingdom of God and to mankind, but it would actually be good for the country. It would bring about success for the country, like the parable of the man who builds his house on rock instead of on sand. It may look easier, nicer to build it on sand, easy to make it nice and level, get everything just how you want it. But if you take the time, dig down, build on that foundation of rock, may seem a little impractical, may seem like a lot of hard work, but you're going to build something that's going to last. And when that storm comes, storms are always coming, changes are always happening, but if your house is built the right way, then it will last. And that stands true for an individual's life and also for a country that chooses to live by those precepts or not. And here's a comment by Julie Looms, who says, Trump is not against helping the poor and underdogs. He just doesn't agree with Biden-Harris about allowing illegal immigrants into the country. He will allow many to stay, but will clean up the criminals and stop the fentanyl. As well, he has business sense to help the economy. I think you're quite misguided, Peter, and that you should look into things much deeper. There is wickedness in high places with Biden, Harris, and Walsh. God help America, and God help the world. Well, amen to that last part. I'm going to take a few points from here and talk about them. Again, as I said before, if Trump is in favor of helping the poor and underdogs, let's see it. And it starts off with the least. Who are the most poor and most underdogs? Let's see him help those people. He's a very rich man. Even just as a private citizen, he could be doing a lot. I mean, the fact that someone is a billionaire, even, that kind of calls into question their morality. I guess you have to see, what are they doing with those billions? Where are those billions? Are those billions in a foundation that is doing aid for people, or why do you have billions of dollars in the first place? It's not just about Trump, but of course there are people who are much worse examples of that. People who have so much wealth, and one day God's going to say, "Hey, what did you do with all that wealth?" Just like He says to the rich man in that parable in the Gospel of Luke. Now, Biden and Harris were not about allowing illegal immigrants into the country. Unfortunately, I wish they were. I wish they were much more open as far as letting people in and helping them. They were very tough on the border. Unfortunately, Trump and a lot of his supporters look at that and they say, oh, they were too soft. We want to be even harder. They look at the terrible things going on between Palestine and Israel and they say, oh, the Democrats were being too soft on the Palestinians. We need to be even harder. There's a number of situations like this where the Democrats were being bad, and the Republican response to that was, well, we're going to do even more. The Democrats aren't being tough enough. We need to be even tougher. And unfortunately, just the first few weeks of Trump's presidency, we're already seeing some of that. Now, something I've heard from a few people, like what she says here about how I'm misguided, I need to look into things much deeper. I've had people say that to my face as well, and it tends to be because I question or just outright don't believe in some conspiracy theory that they're telling, where it says to look into things much deeper. When I've heard that before, it tends to mean, you need to watch or listen to such and such a podcast or video that's going to explain, something what I would call a conspiracy theory. It's not looking deeper into the words of Jesus, looking deeper into the epistles, looking deeper into how the New Testament tells us that we are to treat people, or even how the Old Testament teaches us to treat people. It's more about listening to this or that podcast or video that's going to tell you something about globalists or the elites and the behind the scenes. It's going to require me to believe something that I can't verify for myself, and I'm certainly not going to find in the New Testament, and then to change my whole outlook on the world. And I can't do that. I have to have my foundation, the way I see things has to come from the teachings of Jesus. We all need to have a moral standard, and it can't be based on doing our own research or letting someone else tell us what we're supposed to believe. Now, if I'm wrong about that, I would very much like to look into whatever it is you're asking me to look into. Please reach out, leave a comment, send me an email. Although I'll say up front that if it's not something from the New Testament, something based on a Christian lifestyle according to the words of Jesus, I might not really have the time to look into it. Another comment by Julie Looms, who says, I think Trump and his team are way more capable and inspired by God to turn the wickedness around that is destroying America. Well, I sure hope you're right. I mean, my concern and what I see is that Trump and his team are the epitome of the wickedness that is destroying America. And, well, maybe we'll see things turn out better. Again, these first few weeks have been very, very hectic. A lot of things kind of going the wrong way, but it's just been a few weeks. There's a lot more to come. Things could go the right way. And here's a comment by Give It to God, who says, OMG, I cannot believe you actually came out with that disgusting opinion of yours, with all due respect. That woman literally said you are not welcome here when someone cried out, Jesus is king. And that's who you would support, referring to how in my video on my preference, I said that I would prefer to see Harris as president than Trump. Not to mention her entire campaign was based on abortion, and if that isn't bad enough, she is pro-abortion even after birth. Yeah, no, not true. Donald J. Trump isn't an angel, and they're all wings of the same bird, so I didn't vote for either one of them. But for God's sake, to even entertain voting for that woman is nothing but of the devil. Well, I commend you for staying out of voting. That's a perfectly good choice, but do keep in mind that there were about 140 or more million Americans who voted in the election, and a lot of them, even most of them, were Christians. And a lot of Christians, they have to look at two candidates. Neither one of them is really up to the standard of Jesus, but they have to determine, as an American, I get to vote. Who am I going to vote for? Who's going to be even just less bad than the other? So, again, good for you for not voting, but also don't be too harsh on Americans who did decide to vote for one of those candidates. You need to do some serious praying because, in my opinion, you have definitely been compromised. Well, the story of my prayer life is very interesting. Actually, I've been thinking about doing a video on that, kind of my prayer life going back to my late teen years, 18, 19, 20, all the way up through now. It's been an important part of my life, and I've gone through some changes and waves in the way I put myself to prayer and the kinds of things I pray for over the years. But yes, I do need to do serious praying. I continue to do serious praying, do more serious praying. I don't know about if I've been compromised. I try to, I feel like, again, this is kind of that attitude of, you have to be looking at something else. You have to be looking deeper, looking at something other than the teachings of the Bible. And I just can't agree with that. I mean, I think if your take on things comes from the commandments of Jesus to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, I don't think you can be compromised if you're sticking to that as strictly as you possibly can. He goes on to say, and just so you know, someone promoting abortion, her, and someone promoting Jesus, you, is like oil and water. They don't mix. Well, I don't think I'll ever be a part of any kind of Harris government or anything like that. I don't think I would be a good mix for that kind of thing. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I haven't heard her promote abortion. That's something, again, I don't get. I hear this a lot from Republicans talking about Harris in the past, or about other Democrats too, like as if everything they're saying is about abortion. To be honest, I did not hear her talk about abortion, except maybe in answering a question here or there. She may have addressed it. Again, if she was promoting abortion, something that apparently Republicans saw much more than anyone else, because it didn't seem to be a major part, if any part at all, really, of what she campaigned on. Here's some comments to a video that I made called My Reaction. This was after the election, talking about my reaction to it. Here's Izzy Jimenez saying, this country is full of hypocrites, selfish individuals, racists, and stupid people. It's truly embarrassing that Trump won. We've shown the world that many Americans lack common sense, intelligence, and ethics. These voters chose Trump, believing he would boost the economy and provide them with a few extra $100 each month. This mindset is both selfish and stupid. They just hired a fox to guard the chicken coop. Trump is a liar, felon, and a sexual predator. Well, yeah, there's a lot of truth to what he says here. This nation certainly has some problems in the ethics department, and we do elect the kind of people that reflect our ethics. That's why I like it when someone who hasn't been president before wins. then at least we can say we didn't vote for the guy who already has the bad record. Hey, at least we tried something different. But no, unfortunately, we did put Trump back into office after what he did his first term and after all the things that he said he would do in his second term. And a lot of people looked at all that and said, yep, I want that. And well, now we have it. And we've had a pretty tumultuous first several weeks. I hope things get better. But I am surprised by the speed at which things have gone, but not surprised by the policies themselves, because they're all the kinds of things, whether it's Trump's plan to deport all the Palestinians from Gaza, or some of his economic stuff, the tariffs and trade war stuff. Those are the kinds of things that he did run on doing. Now, some of those things better or worse than others. Maybe he will have a successful economic policy, as a lot of Trump supporters have been saying. That remains to be seen. But yes, he did a lot of bad things during his first term, said he would do a lot of bad things in his second term, and people said, okay, here, you have all the power, and now he gets to do those things. And here's William Joes, good friend and a frequent commenter on this channel, who says, well, a wicked people deserve a wicked king. I guess time will tell. The thing about it is they won everything, lock, stock, and barrel, so the changes he wants to bring about will come quickly, as he only has a short time, 4 years. Well, he's right. The Republican victory was quite substantial. Presidency, Senate, House, and Trump will more or less be able to carry out his agenda at least until the midterm elections, when Democrats might gain enough seats in Senate and House to pose a bit more of an opposition to Trump. A wicked people deserve a wicked king. You know, that's the tough thing about that is it tends to be, in the case of America, it's people who don't get to vote who end up suffering the most from wicked American policies, whether it's America's foreign policy, drone wars, regime change, coups, that kind of thing, or whether it's border policy, migration policy, deporting people, or people in foreign countries who suffer from sanctions imposed by the United States. You know, it's the people who suffer from the wickedness didn't deserve it and didn't ask for it. Now, I get the point of what he's saying, though. You know, is this reflective of the American people? Gosh, yes and no. Again, like I've said, there's a lot of really good Americans, really good Christian Americans who are generous, kind, thoughtful, showing the fruits of the Spirit, who will then go and vote for a candidate who has attitudes that do not coincide with the New Testament. So it's a tough situation. Yes, I mean, we have to say, yes, that having someone like Trump does reflect the American public. But I think by and large, the average American is a much better person than Trump, and the average American Christian who voted for Trump is a much better person than Trump. And finally, here from commentator Upstate New York, who says, prayers for your daughter. Across New York State, where I live, ash trees are plentiful but dying out due to the ash borer infestation. I took down a huge ash tree in my lawn a few weeks ago and have about 25 more to cut. I've always heated with wood or coal, and I'll be warm now for as long as I'm able to haul the wood and feed the stove. In that video I made about my reaction to the election, I talked a bit about cutting down an ash tree on a neighbor's property and wondering what kind of tree it was, and looking at it and comparing it to things and realizing that it was a southern subspecies of the American ash. He says, I spent the last week at my girlfriend's house/farm. We've been together for 18 years. She's Democrat and I'm a Republican, served a three-year term on the New York State Republican Nominating Committee. We didn't discuss politics, we didn't watch the election, and we didn't discuss the decay of Western civilization. We worked the land. She rode and trained her mule, and it was blessedly peaceful. As a church elder, when I returned for Sunday services, I knew that some in the congregation would be dismayed, and I was right. As an elder, I preach within our church when our pastor or lay pastor is unavailable. I wasn't in the pulpit Sunday, but I related the story of the week previous and tried to comfort those who do not vote as I do. We must all, quote, render unto Caesar, and both parties are capable of evil. Trump is a bit too liberal for me, though, the lesser of two evils, as I see it in my own Christian perspective. My family has lived in our rural upstate area since 1811 after service in the Revolutionary War. Many other families in our community and congregation have a similar legacy. I still attend the second church my ancestors built in 1882, the church I was raised in. I had left the community for over 30 years to pursue my healthcare career and came back in 2012. The national governance of the church had changed quite a bit since I was a lad. I no longer serve in politics, but serve the Lord and the community. I have and continue to bring as many souls into the fold as I can. This to me is how a better America is built. God bless. I really appreciate that comment. I don't really have a lot to say about it. I think it just speaks for itself, a calm, thoughtful, kind and godly attitude towards the situation that I wanted to highlight. Well, thank you everyone for your comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I gave you something to think about. I certainly read and think about every one of your comments that I see here. Again, please, if you have something to say about my question, the question I posed at the beginning of this video, is there a Christian case to be made for supporting Donald Trump and his words and actions? Please tell me what that is in the comment section below. And if I get some really good comments, I'll do a follow-up video where I read some of those and respond to them. Well, God bless you. I look forward to talking to you again later, and I'll say goodbye for now.